boots on ground, serve with pride, never back down from the fight. Deserts and the city streets, we keep pushing through the night. Battle tested, battle ready, earn respect through blood and sweat. Unapologetic veterans and we ain't finished yet. Veterans speaking truth, real stories, breaking down the walls, tearing through the lies. This is our time to rise. From the Corps to the Army, Navy, Air Force to Coast Guard, standing ready, red, white, and blue. No filter on the mic, just the truth we bring. Welcome to the show where the real vets sing. Unapologetic veterans, turn it up loud. We serve, we fought, we stand proud.
Welcome, everybody, to another wonderful episode of the Unapologetic Veterans Podcast. Today's a little special episode. A little special. Just like my co-host, Dr. James.
I'm special more ways than one.
I didn't say it, you did. You said it. I'm pretty excited for this episode. It's I think it's something that isn't necessarily talked about this way. It's always typically talked about in a negative connotation. It's not negative, I don't think. I'm sure everybody has a horror story, has heard a horror story. But I think that we have a lot of gratitude, a lot of our support for our spouses, right? So I've got a couple spouses that have graciously joined us this morning.
Your headset's cutting in and out.
It's cutting in and out. Oh, hold please.
Uh-oh. Folks, this is an error that has just me on the podcast.
All right. I don't know, it's doing its own thing.
Okay.
But I've got two spouses this morning that I would like to bring up. We may have a third. We'll see. So we have Small Z and Aaron joining us this wonderful morning. All right, so we'll start below me since Small Z's below me. Small Z, if you could just take a few minutes and introduce yourself and give us a quick background on who you are and how you fit this episode.
My name's Small Z, or Amanda, and I have been with my husband for 13 years. I was with him while he was active duty, and now he is medically retired. And kind of just come here to share about the life of being a military spouse, and even after they retire, and the things that you go through and face. So that's me.
I was going to tell Smallsy to make it short, but that would go over her head.
Thanks, Dr. James.
Aaron, what you got?
Good morning. My name is Aaron McCarthy, Mac Semper. I am a retired veteran myself. I served 4 years in the Marine Corps, 18 in the Army. I've been married to my wife, who's a retired Sergeant Major after 31 years. Been married for 25, well, we're on year 25. And I retired 10 years, 10 and a half years before she did. And I was a Mr. Mom for the majority of that time. We are officially retired and moved to Texas from Washington. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of my intro.
Okay, short and sweet to the point. That's what we like. So, well, let me pull this up real quick. All right. So we've, well, with the exception of Smallsy, the three of us, we've all served in the military in some capacity, some longer than others. Uh, Me specifically, I did not retire out of the military, um, but we've all had, or were married at some point during our time of service. Now, the old saying that I hear quite often is, if the military wanted you to have a spouse, they would issue you one. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Oh, I absolutely was issued my spouse for sure. I met my wife in recruiting school, so we were both E5s at the time. And yeah, I mean, if I could have a cookie cutter, kind of a career in and out of the military and find somebody throughout my ups and downs in and post military, somebody that understood kind of where I was coming from for the most part, and somebody that was had like interests, right? We bounced off of each other, whether it was PT, getting ready for just PT tests. I remember, kind of thinking about that. We were going to schools or getting promoted, and that was definitely, I had the right person for that. So that part, she pushed me and I pushed her, and we were able to do, I mean, everything from NCOERs to writing counseling statements together, for different, obviously opposing, branches, but same thought process on leadership. So that definitely helped on both sides. So, and I'm taller than her, so that obviously makes me look tall. So, but yeah, I mean, all in all, it's been an awesome 25 years. So
That's amazing. That is amazing. I actually, and I know Dr. James specifically, I don't know if you guys have listened to any of our other episodes, but Dr. James specifically has talked about when he was active and his story with that. Would you care to share that again for those that haven't heard it? So it sounds like, Aaron, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you've had a really good experience with being, in your case, co-active military household instead of being a dependa, as TikTok chat is saying over here repeatedly. But being a dependent. Now I know towards the tail end, you sounds like you got out before she did. But what?
yeah, go
Sorry.
ahead. No.
What is that transition like? Right.
Well, I'll tell you, April 14th of 2015 was my last day in uniform. The 18th, I was sitting on my couch and my wife is going to work in uniform. That day was probably the hardest thing, because we would leave, we would piggyback. One would take the kids to school that morning or daycare before school. So it was back and forth. And then all of a sudden, here I am. I've got to try to figure out my day. I will never forget that. It was absolutely extremely, because they don't, we all talk about it. They don't prepare you for civilian life, let alone having dual military, and so it becomes, one still moving up the ladder, still got that career progression, still was laser focused her whole military career. Me, I just kind of went with the flow. And so, she's very driven. Me, I thought at the time I could just make the transition, walk out the door. Monday morning, I'll be milling lumber and cutting down trees and clearing brush and doing the same things that most people see me do all the time, finding something to do. That took about 4 years for me to kind of get my feet underneath me and really start to get a direction. I mean, I've done everything from mill lumber to buy storage units to flip. I love that next best thing, right? Flip a golf cart to a car to a Jeep to a camper and it was just, it was hard because, here I am 41 years old and all my friends are still working,
Mhm.
and they tell me, hey, thanks for your service, go ahead and just enjoy your life. And it's like, well, my wife's still working. She doesn't plan on retiring anytime soon. She's going to hit Sergeant Major. She's going to get her master's degree. And, I didn't have a distance and a direction on the 18th of April, 2025. And that's when everything really kind of fell apart for me for a long time. So if it wasn't for having that, having somebody like her that understood where I was coming from on a lot of things, I probably would be on my third marriage, and I don't mean to say that in a negative
I'm on my
way.
turn. Come on now.
I know, but
In final, for the record,
it-
in final.
right, but
Said
it
we
was
won't get a divorce, but she will be a widow.
right, and so so it was just difficult. I mean, we had work a lot. We're different, but we're still the same. We look at things differently. My wife is a first generation Hispanic. She came here when she was 5. She is, I can't say enough about all the awesome things about her, and watching her come here illegally as a 5-year-old, and then do the 8-year mandatory enlistment to get her naturalization, to become a U.S. citizen, and be a part of that whole process it gave me a different outlook on life and what the real American dream is. And this to me is the American dream, right? We're both, she turns 50 here in a couple of weeks, and it's just awesome. I mean, it's awesome to kind of see all that hard work come to fruition. So, yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to carry
Take it back and switch to Smallsy a little bit. So, Aaron, you've got a trifecta, right?
Mhm.
You are, and I'm thinking this from a negative perspective, but just put it in the perspective. You were military,
Mhm.
and having a military background as a dependent can sway or skew some of how you observe things, right?
100%.
You're a dependent, which means after you retire and she's still in, which means you are now a civilian, and that means you don't have the access or read on or whatever to understand other than what she can tell you, right? Because that's what a lot of dependents are. They have to rely on their command or their husband or their wife to tell them what's happening. And then the third is that you're a male. And the reason why I say that is because it's a predominantly heavily male profession. And being a male dependent, when you go to the FRGs and you're the only male, a bunch of wives, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So with that, I'm going to transition to Smallsy a little bit, if I can. So how did you navigate that? Only he can tell me or command can tell me. I'm really just transitioning through the civilian world because I'm not, I'm kind of that odd egg in the civilian world. And as the military FRG, or I don't know what they call them in the Marines, but whatever that equivalent is, how did you navigate those roles?
It was actually incredibly hard. Um, when my husband was being medically retired. I met him right before they were putting him on the med board. And he was on a lot of medications. He was missing a lot of work. He had a gunny that was after him because he missed a formation, because he was on a lot of medications and slept in. He did 3 tours and he was suffering a lot from night terrors and insomnia and things in that nature. And his command was not lenient. MARSOC had him switch to a different command because they marked him non-deployable, and put him on light duty. And then the gunny was being kind of rude because he didn't get the information, and it was just a lot of back to back to back. Like, I had to drive him to work sometimes because he was so medicationed up that he couldn't drive. It was a lot, and I could see him slipping away out of himself. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was a very hands-on Marine. He loved being Marine. And they were taking it from him. And he was trying to fight it, but at the end of the day, it was just nearly impossible because there was 2 commands going back to back over it, and somebody chimed in where they had no input, and it was tough. It was tough to watch. And then when he finally did get out of the military, you could just see he lost all sense of purpose with his life. I mean, it was just gone. The light in all he did was sit and play video games. Like, I could barely get him to eat. And not to make him sound weak, but he was still on a lot of medications. And he lost everything. Everything that he loved, he lost. And it wasn't at a fault of his own. It was what the military says, you do. You know what I'm saying? And that's always the life. It's, you don't get a say. Which goes back to, if the military wanted you to have a wife, they would issue you one. That is absolutely true. You are sacrificing your life as well. You're going to have to raise kids on your own. You're going to have to go through the battles of being there after combat, before combat, going through med board processes, going through them getting out. And the first year of a military member getting out of the military is actually vital, and it is the most high in self-unaliving rates. So it's like, because they've lost everything. They've lost their purpose, their tempo. As Dr. James says, there's 3 vital things. And you have to sit there and watch. There's not much you can do as a spouse. You just sit there and be as supportive as you can.
I want to kind of dive into that just a hair deeper. So I know that you currently work with veterans all the time, and you have for quite a while. The biggest issue, not necessarily the biggest issue, but one of the things that, and I want your thoughts on this too, Aaron. When we get out of the military, it is truly one of the hardest things for a lot of us to actually do. Not necessarily physical, but more mental and somewhat emotional, I would argue. It's like nobody it's like nobody understands it, but people say they understand it all the time. Like, in our community that we have, if I say, oh, hey, I struggled with this, I've got 15 people said, yeah, makes sense. But like, we're in this community, but when you're at home, what does that struggle look like, right? So like, Smalls, in your case, you didn't serve. In Aaron's case, you did serve, and at the time, your wife was still active duty. Would you argue that now that, since you guys have been in this community, you've heard other people's stories, would you say that transition's easier with somebody who's still active duty, or would you say it's harder? like obviously Smallsy, I know you didn't serve, but like that transition, how do you as a spouse deal with that? Right? Like it truly is difficult for an individual. Like I remember what I went through and how I've kind of fell all the way down and worked my way back up. It's for lack of a better way to say it. And like for me, if it wasn't for my wife, I'd probably be laying in a ditch somewhere. You know what I mean? And like she is a prior military spouse. You know, her dad was active duty for many years, so she's heard the stories and she's kind of familiar with it. But like in y'all's experience, do you think it's easier or harder in that sense?
I'm going to chime in on this one, and I think it's harder for an active duty military member and a veteran because you have to watch them succeed. You have to watch them go into work. You have to watch them, everything that you love to do, you have to watch them do. And that has to be tough because you can take a veteran out of the military, but you can't take the military out of a veteran. And even with my Vietnam veteran I care for, he is all veteran, like he is ready to rock and rumble at any given time. And we're talking about an 80-year-old man. It is the training, it is what they reset you to be. And taking that away is you're losing everything. You're losing every bit of purpose that you signed up for, and then watching somebody do that has to be more hard. And even with my husband, like it was tough. I didn't know what to do. I was young. I knew nothing about combat veterans, especially. I didn't understand the night terrors, the insomnia, the pacing, the anxiety attacks. I didn't understand any of it. It took me time to grow into understanding because I met my husband after combat, and the things that he was struggling with. So I had no idea what to do. It was all hands-on learning, I would wake up and my husband was clearing the house. I had to take his firearms away from him. And you know how like demeaning that was for him. Because this is a MARSOC Marine, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, no, give me the keys to your safe. You are no longer safe to have firearms. It's just things like that and the things that he struggles with that nobody really talks about. Because it is demeaning to them. He allows me to speak on it, but he doesn't per se like it because it makes him feel weak. But this is the things that our combat veterans are dealing with. Even my dementia veteran, my dementia guy that I deal with, Vietnam era, still insomnia, still combat PTSD. Like it just doesn't go away. And we're talking, he served in Vietnam at 20 years old. This is a lifelong sacrifice they deal with and trying to readjust to a civilian life that they don't want. So I'm going to let Aaron take it over.
Yeah, nor do we know, right? And I think the word that I was stuck on in that you touched on, Smallsy, was the purpose, right? And people don't understand, right? When you're an 18-year-old, I look at my 18-year-old right now. She is going to school full time. She is teaching swim classes. She's got softball going on. She's got a life outside of this, right? She is laser focused on getting college done, right? And I think about when I was 18, I had no direction. I knew I didn't want to be a farmer. I grew up as a farm kid. I did not want that. I wanted to get out of the small town that I had only known my whole life. And so what's the next best thing? You join the Marine Corps and you head to the West Coast.
Join the Marine Corps.
Yeah, right. So and so I did my 4 years in the Marine Corps, got out. I went to school, and What was my first hit out of the Marine Corps? Well, you ran out of college money. And you're like, what? How do I run out of college money when they say, well, they'll pay for your college? They don't tell you that it only is a portion of that. So I'm like, well, what else am I going to do? So I go to school to be a plumber, and I was like, man, I don't want to be in somebody's sewer pipe for the rest of my life, you know?
Absolutely.
But I thought, well, you know what? That's going to be my backstop. That's going to be my backstop. That is, if you don't have a backstop, and I think that's what they don't teach you, right? What's your backstop? All the way. I mean, you could take a soldier, Marine, airman, sailor, coastie, whatever, and you could say from the day one, when you stand on those yellow footprints, you ask every single soldier to write down or service member, what's your backstop, right? And that should be what you should be focused on 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, 8 years down the road. And the reason why I say that is because when I got out of the Marine Corps, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew that I needed to find a job.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, what do? Who's gonna take an infantry Marine at 21 and a half years old, 22, and give them a $60,000 or at the time $50,000 job where I can survive? Nobody, unless I'm gonna go work construction. So what do? I go work construction. Well, that's not in the cards because I don't like being in the cold. I don't want to dig ditches. You know what I mean? And it's just that psyche. A lot of people can gut it, but they're still struggling with that purpose. Like, oh shit, I should have done X 20 years ago. And now I'm too deep into this career path where I don't have an out and my body's racked. You know, the VA can't decide whether it's service connected or it's from 20 years of digging ditches. You know that intellectually you're well and above beyond, like, focus wise, purpose wise. As a service member, you're focused, right? You're focused while you're in, because it's a mission first. But it's a hierarchy, and you've got a guaranteed promotion track as long as you keep your shit clean and you stay on track with what the basic guideline outline for your term of service is. So now fast forward that 20 plus years and you get out and you got a brain injury, you got bad knees, you got bad hips, you got blast injuries, you've got hearing loss, and then try to go and do that job that you went to school for 18 and a half years ago. And it doesn't work. So then you're sitting here like Smallsy talked. I tried the sitting there gaming. Here I am sitting on 10 acres of property in the mountains, and I've got a sawmill, I've got a tractor, I've got an excavator, I've got all these great, awesome things. But I got nobody to share that experience with. And so you run down this track of despair, self-pity. The alcohol is a great friend of yours. I remember dropping my kids off at the bus stop at 7:30, and this was my life for almost 8 years. Drop my kids off at the bus stop at 7:30, go to the gas station, fill 2 5-gallon jugs up of diesel fuel, buy a tin of Copenhagen and a 12-pack of beer, and then come home, start that whole process, that whole cycle from 8:30, 9 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and then make sure that all my alcohol was gone by the time my wife got home and I had sobered up enough where I could actually function for my family, which didn't end up happening because I would pass out on the couch. What kind of life is that?
Mm-hmm.
But they don't teach you, or they don't I don't know, I don't even know the word. They don't untrain you after the fact. And like she said, she was talking about the 80-year-old, the Vietnam vet. He hasn't been desensitized enough where he can look at life differently. My Uncle Jerry's the same way. He's a 65-year-old guy. He was in Beirut. The guy's still only 8 years of service. He can't work in another job around people because he is so laser focused on the mission, on the mission, on the mission. And it's, but we all have to figure out a way where there are some of these. We have to figure out a way where not so much desensitizing a service member, but kind of retraining that brain where, there's something that has value outside of that uniform, and we're failing miserably. I sat on a 5-gallon bucket. I still have it in my garage. November 4th, 2018. I was right down that road. 3.5 years from the date I got out, and I was ready to say goodbye. But
Let me interrupt you for a quick second.
Yeah.
So, at that time, your wife was still active duty, correct?
Yep. Yes, she was.
Would you say that it's obviously it's kind of hard to say, it's more of a guess, but would you say that she noticed or picked up on or anything that you were going through at that time?
So she definitely noticed. Getting wounded was a game changer for me. It made me look at everything differently. All the way, and I can kind of touch on this. Like when I got wounded, I came home, and they were still there for another 4 months. But when they came back, they come back. They got their 90 days of leave or whatever they had for leave. And then by the time everybody's back, I'm already gone and I've been, transferred. So I don't see any of those guys for years. Or, I see them, but I don't really, you're not there with them every day. My wife was the only one that was there constantly, and she had to deal with, my self-destruction. And it was, I honestly think, and this is just, it's sad, but she's still focused on her mission. She's still trying to be a mom, trying to be a spouse, trying to stay focused on mission. The end goal, she wanted to be a sergeant major. That was her thing. Working on her master's degree. She had a lot of stuff going on, and I think she put the blinders on until I think she was hoping that something didn't happen. And I can't speak for her, but I'll tell you what, my wife is hard as peckerwood, man. She just never told me that I was doing anything wrong. It wasn't until the 5-gallon bucket incident where she finally said, enough is enough. You either get some help or I'm gone. And so, we made a drastic change. We sold the land, moved to town, so she was closer to post where she could have maybe a little more control over me, and she kind of put that sergeant major's hat back on, and I did a lot of therapy. And I think that it was, I'm trying to think time frame wise. I don't think it was until mid 2019 where I actually kind of figured out that I if I didn't have a purpose didn't have a purpose at any given time, whether it be doing yard maintenance or landscaping or building a shop or building a Willys Jeep or anything, I would not be in a good position. So she is to this day allows me to do those things, so I stay focused on a task. Have I relapsed? Yeah, I relapsed a couple of times, but they haven't been long enough where I'm running down that rabbit hole so far I can't come back out of it. So
would you say, because you both served, that she has a different understanding on how that looks like?
She absolutely does.
Given, like in Smallsy's case, where Smallsy didn't serve,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that changes the response there? Because my wife says it all the time, as a spouse, and not always, that a lot of times you put your career, your life on hold to allow somebody else to do and exceed and grow in their profession, right? And so in that case where, you got out, your wife still, her goal is still to hit sergeant major, which is, challenging in its own right. Do you think that because you served gives you a better perspective on that, like on that situation? Obviously, you still have the same struggles getting out and learning your purpose and stuff, but from the dependent side, do you feel that gave you a different approach, a different viewpoint, because you also served?
Well, she can definitely understand better kind of the struggles I'm going through. I'm not going to talk about my wife's a lot about her military experience, but she can understand, but she doesn't. She can't relate, and that and that's still there, right? And she didn't take a back seat. Well, she did when I deployed the first time, right? She became, the head of the household. But
Like
when
you
we
have to take
deployed,
turns taking back seats.
right, we did do that, for her schooling, all of her trips to DC, her trips all around everywhere. The part that I think what's relatable to Smallsy is we still have a responsibility at home. She could do that because she's very good at multitasking. I'm not. I am mission driven, mission focused, move forward, punch through that wall, and she could look at the whole battle space, and this is our battle space of our family and our life, in marriage, and go, okay, this is relevant, this is important, I need to do this, I need to pay bills, I need to feed the kids, I need to, focus on my college, I need to go to DC this week, I need to go to Thailand next month, and you got to figure this stuff out. But I don't think people understand. Let me back up. I think people understand, and I think that a lot of my stories are relatable, but I do also think that the family dynamic, if you don't have somebody with a little bit of compassion in your relationship to kind of give a little more flex, it's doomed to fail, but on both ends, right? Because you can't, I've talked about this in the past with events that I've done. It doesn't matter if you're a civilian or you're a veteran or you are a service member. People are people, right? And if I want to do something bad, if I want to be a piece of crap, I'm going to be a piece of crap. It doesn't matter how great my wife is, right?
Mhm.
If I want to continue those bad habits, there is no amount of pushing me the other direction that's going to make me change unless I want to change. And she talked about her husband, and Smallsy, you couldn't push him off the couch for all the money in the world, correct?
Yeah, it was definitely a choice. Actually, it took an Army brother that we met in Ohio, and he just passed away to get him out of that headspace, and I wasn't capable of doing it.
If I can just real quick, somebody on TikTok says you sound like a very smart man, Aaron. So
Not true.
that's good.
Not
But
true.
but there's several points that you have both have brought up, and I don't know which one we want to attack first, but there you said mission first, but as a dependent you got to rely it's their mission first, right? Because they were given the command, which means you've got to tag along in what that command or that orders are where they're sending you. That's the first thing. The second thing came up is the spouse's skill set. Because if you're transferring every 2 years or 3 years, one of the people said in the comments that they have a $75,000 education. How do you take that and move it from Fort Bragg to Fort Rucker in the middle of nowhere, Alabama, to Fort Wainwright in the middle of nowhere, Alaska, to Vicenza, Italy, to wherever? So spouses may be extremely well trained, but can't transfer that skill set very easily. And then the second thing, or the third thing is, and before the fourth thing, was that the spouse's role becomes an automatic buffer, right? Because you're going through stuff and then you get to redeploy, you go back home and you haven't disciplined the kids for a year, right? And you've got to decompress and you're going to go into self-isolation mode. And somebody said, not a single parent, but solo parent. So spouse becomes the therapist, becomes the mediator, becomes the transition to civilian life. They've got a skill set they got a responsibility they didn't sign up for. Into that. And then the last thing I want to ask about, and again, these are, I know, huge questions, but you both, and you said it indirectly, but I'll say it directly. Is there a chain of command in the spouses?
I was just gonna say that. So that's actually what I was thinking about.
It's a chain of custody.
It's true though. And you know what? There's times where I have to try to relate to him in a military capacity, especially like he had a flashback, a cannon went off, and here's my husband running down the street, and I didn't know what the hell to do. I didn't know. So all I did was I shouted his last name as loud as I could twice. And he's like, why didn't you tell me that was happening? And I was like, I didn't know it was happening, but like I had to adapt to that moment. But it comes down to, they don't have anybody telling them what to do anymore. They don't have any guidance. And he even says, like, it's easier to be deployed than it is stateside. It's easier to be in the military. You always have a job. There's always something to do. There's always somebody telling you what to do. And all that matters is your brothers and sisters to the left and right of you. That's all that matters. When he got out of the military, there's nobody. There's nobody. There's only me. He has had maybe 2 of his veteran brothers out of 16 years come and visit him. And it's like life everything drops. And you have this sad reality, they're getting out. This is going to be great. We get to retire. No, it's like a lifelong mission. And that goes to Aaron's point of finding a purpose. He's been a dog trainer. He got his associates in cybersecurity. Now he's back to go get his bachelor's in cyber criminology. He has done so many things just trying to find another purpose for himself and keep himself busy. Because when he sits in his head too long, that's when things go. But when you don't have direction and you've spent 16 years of somebody telling you what to do, from making your bed all the way up, who's going to tell you what to do? So as a spouse, you kind of got to put that hat on as well. you know. And I got into caregiving for veterans because I originally became my husband's caregiver. And he's disabled. He has 280% in total disabilities.
Hey, me too.
It's bad. It's bad, you know? And I'm like, you know, it doesn't stop. It doesn't end trying to get that. You do put your life on hold a lot of the time because they matter more. They matter more than what's to come. You want them to be okay. You want them to be happy, healthy, have another purpose, to know that they're going to be okay. And luckily he figured it out, and he had a buddy that pushed him. But as for me, no, I didn't know how to do that, you know. And as for Aaron, he has Sergeant Major hat on. You know what I'm saying? Like, I wouldn't want to step on those toes. So at least there's a little direction and guidance there, because that's what the military is based on, is direction, guidance, and orders.
Yeah. Well, and I will say that, you know, growing up, okay, so Doc and I are about the same age. You grow up and you're told the man is the head of the household, right? You are the breadwinner. Your wife is there as a secondary. It wasn't until we came back, so we both deployed at the same time, different battle spaces in Iraq in late 2008, 2009. So what was it? July to August. And so we left and we put our 3-year-old and our 8-month-old with my wife's parents. My mother-in-law doesn't speak English, right? So now, fast forward, and my daughter is 2. And my son, who's now 4, who is now diagnosed with Asperger's at 4. So my daughter doesn't speak English. My wife and I haven't been together for 13 months. My son is now diagnosed with Asperger's. And then what do? The first 7 days we're home, we go to Disneyland for 10 days. So, you know, I am now taking a backseat to my children, or to my wife, because she's able to communicate with my children fluently, and then trying to navigate this illness that you have no idea. Nobody teaches you how to deal with, you know, the outbursts, and when they get focused on something, you can't get them out of that, you know, and you're like, well, I'm going to discipline my child. Well, and I look back now and I'm like, holy crap, I was disciplining my kid who's got a mental disorder that he can't control. Mm-hmm. And so you feel like a piece of dirt, you know. So I think that's part of where my alcoholism really took off, was that time frame. The part that you're talking about is taking that back seat, Doc. I told myself when I got out, I was never going to take a back seat. I was going to be in charge. I was going to help be the man of the house. Man, if you tell yourself after, you know, X amount of years, we got married in 2003, after 12 and a half years now, that you're going to be the boss. Man, now who's the boss? You guys have all seen me on social media. Who is the boss of my family?
Sergeant Major. We love her.
We live in Texas, right? I know where my bread is buttered, but it took a long time for me to do that. Like, perfect example is she knows my triggers. She knows the things that really bother me. We do not we went out to eat last night. Where did she sit? She sat with her back towards the door. I sat looking at the door. She knows that about me. We don't put ourselves in, like, we're going to go out to the Riverwalk this week. She knows that if we go on Wednesday, there's the least amount of possibility that there's going to be big crowds. That's the stuff that we've really had to kind of work on, and she's really in tune with kind of my mental health stuff. So it's been very helpful. But But I mean, we laugh now. We're so much more decompressed as a couple. There's no, I mean, there's always tension, right? But there's not the tension like it was when we were serving. When I was off running and going to buy storage units or buying heavy equipment or cutting down 110-foot freaking fir trees so I could mill them, and nobody's around and I'm getting hurt and having seizures. There's none of that anymore. And so life is, if I didn't have her, and I'm not saying this for everybody, but if I didn't have her as a backstop, I wouldn't be here. And I'm not a perfect person. I've made a lot of mistakes. Doc, you and I have had personal conversations about that stuff. And I'm not proud of a lot of the things that I've done in the last 11 years. But I'll tell you what, the best decision I ever made in the 52 years I've been around is marrying that woman. So I will say all the credit goes to her, because if she wasn't there just to listen and understand, I mean, obviously she can't relate when it comes to getting blown up and dealing with being sick all the time, and she can't relate to that, but she definitely can. She can understand now where I'm coming from, because she's dealing with that same stuff. All those great friends we had in the military, I asked her last night, I said, did so-and-so call? Have you talked to her? And she goes, nope, not since August. And you know what, we don't know anything else, She's meeting people through Pampered Chef right now. So what does that tell you?
And that's the sad reality, though. And watching that, it's probably because what's instilled to you is all that matters is your brothers and sisters to the left and right of you. That's all that matters in the military, right? Keeping them safe, keeping them alive. When you're out, they're gone. Poof. They're not around. They barely even text message. My husband last year was very upset because not one of his Marine brothers on Facebook wished him a happy Marine Corps birthday. And it's like, there's hundreds of them. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, you're just forgotten about. And
I don't think it's that you're forgotten about per se. It's when you're active duty and the mission is, the train is going forward and it doesn't stop.
It doesn't stop.
You don't, like, my best friend, right? I talk to him maybe once a month, maybe once every 3 weeks if I'm lucky. We may talk all day. It may be 2 messages. It's been that way in 8 days. I'll have been out for 8 years.
But I see him once a week. I'm just throwing that out there.
It's because you live within an hour from him. But
he's my nephew. That's the flex I get to show. His best friend's my nephew.
Well, I won't throw the shade now. I'll say.
Yeah, he knew my wife before I did.
But I think that the one thing that, if we can retrain these service members, past, present, and future, if we can train them to understand that you're a tool, you're a part of this machine, you're no better than the next best person, right? Doc may have flown some great missions, but there's another guy out there that just got the Medal of Honor for doing something that Doc's probably already done.
I just did a video about that, passing the baton.
Right?
Understanding that you have to take a seat back. Sometimes you have to be the coach and not the player. And I think that's the hardest thing to learn after the military for our veterans. And then for the wives, we just sit back and kind of watch and support where we can. And we learn, it was hands-on learning. That's how I got in my career. Is my uncle took himself and my husband got out of the military. And I was like, oh my God, this is necessary. Like, these veterans, they need help. They really need help. And you know what? I shouldn't even say that, because I'm very protective of my husband when it comes to people forgetting and him feeling loneliness. But then you have to think these veterans are probably going through the same thing my husband's going through. And that's why they're not reaching out, and it's just, what do you do in that scenario? That's why I find these communities absolutely necessary for veterans to have just that sense of brotherhood, man, that sense of sisterhood where you can gather, talk smack, and relate something relatable. Because you go into the civilian world with some Tom, Dick, or Harry, and you're like speaking to this guy in calm.
I'm going to stop you right now real quick, Smallsy, because look at you already, just what Aaron said. You're a natural caregiver for veterans. So you just switch the narrative to your veteran. And that's what it seems like a lot of spouses do. They switch the narrative to helping their veteran. They're switching the narrative. What about you?
Right. That's a good point. Where's her care?
So for me, so a lot of things practice in my job, especially being a spouse, but they don't tell spouses this, is respite care. Being a caregiver, respite care is mandatory, and you will get burnout, and they call it caregiver burnout. So there's times I have to take a break. There's times I tell my husband, like, I can't. I need to find somebody to watch my Vietnam veteran, because if I'm not caring for myself, if I'm not doing the small things just for me, I'm not capable of helping anybody else. So it's necessary to do self-care. Sometimes it's necessary to find daycares, babysitters, XYZ as a military spouse, even to take care of yourself, because it is sacrifice. It's a long, lonely world. And when the military calls, they go. You don't have a choice. You can't say no. So find the little things, find what works for you in your marriage when it comes to you getting some space and you getting some self-care and management. Go out for a couple hours alone, go out to eat, go get your nails done, get your hair done. Just go for you. You know what I'm saying? Because that is necessary. And if you don't do it, you will not last. And I tell all my young military spouses, like, he may look good in the uniform, but there is stuff that comes with it. There is stuff that comes with it, like, it's stressful. It is, you have to be just as high capacity as them. You have to be ready. You have to be deployment ready. You have to be able to take over the hat of mom and dad at any given point. You have to be able to, one night he gets called for duty, you have to be able to be there, like, you always have to have a plan there. You have to be mission ready. There's no ifs and ands or buts about that. So being a military spouse, you're taking on every responsibility that man or woman has as a military member, because they're going to be gone. They're going to be deployed. They're going to go train in Australia for 6 months. You know what I'm saying? And where you have to be ready for that. And if you're not capable of doing that, do not marry a military member.
I think I was thinking about what you were saying, Smallsy, and I do think that there should be part of the briefing process to out-process these service members. And working in transition services for 3 years on my way out, I think there is a part of that process where the spouse is intricate, where the spouse has to be present and a part of this. Because the three of us can say, when I got out, all I wanted to do is just be out the door. I got those briefs. I couldn't tell you what half of those briefs were, and I think part of that is to allow the spouses to be a part of that brief, if there's a spouse, and then on top of that, do some aftercare for the spouses, right? Not necessarily aftercare, but some type of a, FRG does their briefs, the Frisses do their briefs, but do they? Do you know what I mean?
And I was going to say that because there is programs for spouses on base that you can get into with other spouses. But
But to
it
make it
seemingly
mandatory
is
was-
you don't get along. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? A lot of them like try to wear their husband's rank and try to talk down to you, belittle you. And that's not beneficial to any spouse, especially when you're going through things. And for an example, somebody on a Facebook, and this was one of my friends, she a military spouse, she's like, I'm going through a lot, the deployments are happening right now. She goes, I'm going through a lot, and somebody goes, seek therapy, right? And so another military spouse stepped in, but it's like, seek therapy. TRICARE is free. But you, what kind of support is that? I think other military spouses need to be more supportive of the community. But there's a lack of that too, and a lack of trust in the military spouse community. So you kind of just stand alone in the capacity when your husband's gone or your wife's gone. You're kind of just there because you don't want to be a part of these groups. They don't make it welcoming.
And there's another dynamic too. You're not just a hierarchy, but now we have a different military where your spouse may be the same gender, right? And so, you have a Marine who's a, captain who's got a wife there's also this intrinsic bias against that in a lot of the communities, right? So now as a spouse, you're fighting two battles here,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe three.
Smallsy kind of touched on something that we as people who've served kind of joke at. What is the funniest dependent moment you've seen? She brought up the Facebook groups. I've never been in the Facebook groups, but I've heard lots of stories. So I need to hear them.
Okay, so one
I'm
time
going to defer to Smallsy. I stay out of that stuff.
there was one time on TikTok, and I'd never experienced like a spouse wearing their husband's rank. I've never experienced it. I've heard about it in the male spouse community, but there was one time on TikTok I did a post, and this woman was like, my husband's a lieutenant colonel. What's your husband's command? Because I'm gonna get a hold of him right now. And I'm like, oh my God, this is actually a thing, I was like shocked. I was like, and then I did a rebuttal video and I was like, haha, my husband's retired, so come catch him, buddy. Like, but it's like, what are these spouses doing? And you have to understand, when your spouse wears the uniform, you have a responsibility to respect that uniform, respect the things that your spouse stands on, respect their privacy, respect their political and religious beliefs. And you cannot be making a fool of yourself, because that can fall on your spouse.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of you know my joke that I have going on with another fellow TikToker on here who's a mil spouse, and we're E18s, so we want to get a shirt made as E18s. Both of our spouses are E9s. That's when I hear that stuff, I just click, swipe right, and move on, because it's just they've got, as far as I'm concerned, as a spouse, am I going to get mad because somebody doesn't say, have a good day, Sergeant Major, at the gate, when we come on post? No, because it really is, it does nothing for the individual other than pump you up or give you a false sense of a false sense of clout, I guess. I mean, gives you or even unneeded attention.
Yeah.
Yeah,
know?
like just take your husband's rank off. That's what. Just be human.
Yeah,
Be
you're-
human. As a military spouse, that's my best advice I can give to you is just be human. And because honestly, I see so many disrespectful things every day from spouses, and their husbands are active duty, and it's like you are representing them, you know. And the nation sees this, especially when you're on public platforms doing such a thing. The nation is looking at you, and you're not going to be the one getting reprimanded. Your spouse is. So it's like, why would you jeopardize everything that matters, right? Everything that matters in his career. Why would you jeopardize that?
Yeah, I do have one story that
There it
from
comes.
from Joint Base Lewis McChord. So we're at the PX. PX is very large, and of course I'm a civilian. My wife is in uniform. We met there for lunch, and you got all the E4s. Everybody's a knucklehead. Everybody's doing, not everybody, but there's quite a few hands in pockets, talking with their phones on. They're outside of 30 feet from the building, and they still don't have covers on. And we walk out of the PX, and they've got all the little food court trucks there. And I go, "Hey!" And she goes, "Honey, I got this." I was like, "Okay, I'm out. I'm going the other way." And she just kindly walked up, and she's 5 foot tall, and walks up to these 3 soldiers and goes, "Hey, get off your phones, put your covers on, and move on with your day." And they just locked it up. You could tell they were not too far out of AIT. Went to parade rest. "Roger, Sergeant Major." And then went on. But me, I would be like, "Get your shit." But that's the hard part, right? It's like I
The
forget.
PX is always fun.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, hell, I went to visit my best friend in May of last year, and we went to Marine Corps Base Quantico,
Mhm.
and I, had a beard, walked in the PX, covered in tattoos, whatever. And one of the ladies like, "Hey, you're supposed to shave," and I was like, "No, I'm good." But it's crazy how you see that pretty regularly, especially when you first get out, and if you're still near base or whatever, you're like, "Oh wait, I can't do that anymore."
Right.
It's a tough habit to break.
Yeah.
I've got one last question for y'all, and then we're going to close it out. We'll have to do a part 2 of this because I've got more questions now that we've started talking. I've created more questions. But my question to y'all is, if you could give someone a piece of advice about being a military spouse, what would it be and why?
I would say always respect the uniform, respect the cost, and be ready to sacrifice everything, because you too sacrifice, your children sacrifice. And I remember my husband, when he first retired, he saw his daughter for the first time in 4 years. And she looked at me and she said, "Please don't let the Marine Corps take my daddy again." And that hurt me, because he was deployed. She was born in 2005, 2008, 2009, 2011, 2012. He was gone. He was in Africa, Iraq, Afghanistan, Australia. He was gone, and it's sacrifice. Your kids will sacrifice. And if you're not ready to do that, and you're not ready to wear both hats, don't go with a military man, because at the end of the day, I've seen a lot of my brothers and sisters get hurt because of the job that they do, and people are not ready to be in the position of taking on the responsibility and the full role and then being gone all the time, and they're not willing to sacrifice. They're very selfish, and being a military spouse is a selfless job, and it's a thankless job. And you have to be prepared for that.
I would say I agree 100%. I would add that it doesn't matter what he does. What you do is a direct reflection of his service, good or bad.
I'm gonna flip that around. It goes both ways.
Yeah, well, true. I'm thinking about the latest hubbub about a particular mill spouse that is causing a lot of problems on social media. It doesn't, your opinion matters, but when it comes to your husband's military service and when it affects his career progression or his time in service, yeah, you have the right to say what you want to say, but just remember, it's going to affect him or her, and be cognizant of what you say and how you say it. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what a lot of, I say a lot, but like a lot of the spouses that have gotten in trouble or service members who've gotten reprimanded for their spouse, they don't understand that, yeah, you may just be a civilian, but what you say can negatively impact your spouse's military career.
Mhm.
Like, we had I had a service member when I was in Hawaii. I don't remember the exact story, but the long and the short of it is he was getting out already. He had like 9 kids, and it was his last like couple months before he was scheduled to get out, and his wife started getting online on the social media groups, bashing the military, basically saying that, oh, they're not letting him get out, they're not letting him come home. And the command pulled him in and said, look, it's not your time to go. Your wife is causing some issues, and then the second he got out, he this tirade on social media about how terrible the military was. But your actions do have consequences. It's just slightly different when you happen to be a mill spouse compared to just being a regular civilian.
Yeah.
You have anything to add to that, Dr. James?
Dignity and respect goes a long way. Professionalism goes a long way. You in the military, you're required to be professional, but the spouse isn't. But their unprofessionalism or their lack of dignity can cause a ripple effect of bad paperwork. And that's not a good thing. Again, the spouse didn't sign up for it, but they are definitely held to an accountability that they didn't ask for. I do think that a team, husband or wife team, or husband, wife, whatever the case is, a good team is a good command team, like a good sergeant major and a good battalion commander. A good team can make a huge difference, because here's my little spouse story. I was a military spouse. My ex-wife commissioned, and for 2 years before I got my bar, I was at the FRGs, right? I was the only male there. My wife was a platoon leader, right? She was responsible for soldiers, and I would go into these FRGs, and all of a sudden they're like, who's this guy, right? The funny thing is, I won a door prize once, and it was a Longaberger basket filled with Bath and Body Works.
And all the other mill spouses were jealous. They wanted that basket so bad.
They were like, can I have it? I said, I still have a wife. She's going to get this. Right? But the thing is to all your points, make the best of it. There's so many hardships already. There's so many challenges already. There's so many divisive things happening already. Make the best of it, because people are not going to care. And they're going to take that, whatever they can latch onto, and make it worse. So make the best of it, because when you get home, make that your safe space, because the world's against it. I like what Laura. There's a mill spouse in here in the chat. Josh says, continue to date each other no matter how long you've been together. Let me see what else.
Absolutely. That's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think to piggyback off what the doc said, there's a lot of opportunities that could be provided for spouses by just being with somebody who's active duty. I'm not saying Okinawa is the best place in the world or Japan's the best place in the world, but you get to travel. You could go to Japan, Germany, Europe, and you're not paying necessarily to go there and live there and experience that a lot of people never will. Yeah, is Japan the best place to be stationed for 3 years? No, but that's an opportunity that you may have never had. Same thing with Hawaii and some other places that are super expensive to travel to. The military is going to send you there free of charge. You just got to spend 3 years.
I was just going to say that. Was this a personal, you said Japan twice, Josh. So
I know.
like, is this a personal thing going
What are you
on?
alluding to,
No.
Josh?
I mean, I love Japan, but I've had a lot of Marines who would come over there unaccompanied because their spouse did not want to go.
Yeah, and don't miss the opportunities. And I'm so big on this. Your husband or wife's career is so necessary, and a lot of the time spouses are stay-at-home moms or have a part-time job because they have to manage the household. And the military member is the breadwinner, man. Do not ruin that, because within a moment you could strip all of that away from them. And that doesn't only affect you, it affects you, your children, and your spouse, man. They have a career that is giving you a very beautiful life, and it's a privilege. You can go to college, and then after they get out, you have Champ VA, you have benefits, you have Chapter 35. There's a lot of great benefits for you and your children. So yes, it's a sacrifice now, but when even after they're retired, it builds stableness, and it builds a steady life for you and your children.
Yep.
There's also Jane Wayne Day.
I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, because I could talk about our 25 years of being together and what we've achieved from nothing, two broke kids, that just needed an outlet, and now look what we have. Doc, we're doing very well, and it's been a long, hard struggle, but. Look, man, I'm 52 years old and I'm retired. We're both retired. It's a good life after.
Mm-hmm.
It is. And that's probably, I'm going to land my plane with this. Somebody said to me, because I posted a steak dinner that I had cooked for my husband, it must be nice. And I said, yeah, 16 years of sacrifice, 3 combat tours, a disabled body. It was nice. It was nice because he sacrificed everything to give us the life that we have. And I have not one worry in the world, because that man decided to do what he did. And did I stand beside him? Absolutely. But after it all ends, yeah, you're going to have your bumps in the road. Yeah, they go through their stuff, but it is worth it. It is absolutely worth it.
100%.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate the both of you for joining us this morning. We'll probably have to do this again, because as y'all have talked and we've gone back and forth, I have about another 15 questions, and I'm not going to be on here for the next 5 hours going over those questions. So we may have to do a second part to this. But yeah, I appreciate the both of y'all for joining us this morning. It's been a great conversation.
Thanks for having us on.
Yes,
Great.
thank you for the opportunity. It's great to be able to speak on this.
And so for those invited, we're going to be doing the podcast after party on TikTok.
Yeah, so both of you, if you want to, I'm going to drop you down here in a second, and then if you guys want to roll over to the Tiki Tack, more
Thank
than
you
welcome.
again. Thank you again. It was a
Yeah,
pleasure.
have a good one, guys.
Well, that was fun.
It was a great time, great conversation. Like you said, not just a part two, maybe a 3 and a 4, because I think that the challenges that spouses go through are so vast, and there are organizations, nonprofits that are out there specifically focused on mill spouses.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Career incentives, mental health, vocations and stuff. I mean, there's so much out there. So it's a need, and there's a lot of legislation that's focused on spouses. Matter of fact, if you are applying for a DoD or DOW or a Fed job, one of the questions they ask you one of the questions is, are you a military spouse?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to wrap it all up, like, I would not be half the person I am if it wasn't for my wife. Not even a snowball's chance in hell that I'd be anywhere close to where I'm at. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I've always managed to fail forward, which is hard enough to do as it is.
Yeah.
Having that support system, my wife and my boys, like, it gives you a sense of purpose, gives me something to go home to. That's the way I'll say that, and I cannot thank her enough for everything that she's done for me in my journey up until now, and to see where this will be in the next 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I've not met her, but I met you, right? And to that point about having a good spouse, and I'll use a scripture that says a wife from the Lord is a good thing. And I don't think that just stops at the military door, right?
Mm-hmm.
Back to the command team, back to having somebody that can understand what it is that you're going to go through, that you're going to be deployed again, or you're going to have to be reintegrated when you come back. And that's some challenges that again, they didn't sign up for, and there they are, right in the middle of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, with that, thank you again to Aaron and Smallsy. I appreciate y'all for being on here, giving your words of thought, and kind of sharing a little bit about y'all's story. We'll definitely have to do this again. Next time I will send you guys the questions so we can.
All right.
Short and sweet to the point. No. So you guys know what we're going at. As always, I want to thank Homefront SITREP and Heroes Media Group for helping sponsor this wonderful show that we give y'all. Again, thank you to everybody, the support, the comments, the likes, the shares. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to us. It helps spread the word of our show. With that, I think that is all I've got for today. Y'all stay unapologetic.